July 16th, 2023. Big week. Cancer new moon. The nodes change signs. Venus goes retrograde. Sun goes into Leo, and other stuff too. When it comes to the nodes changing signs, last week put out a video on that, and you can find that on the channel if you haven't seen it already. This coming week on Wednesday, the 19th, we'll have a special video out on Venus retrograde. Don't want to miss that. You should subscribe. You should subscribe. That's, I get no financial remuneration from the channel or anything like that. You should subscribe because this way you'll get the good stuff, and you should never succumb to peer pressure, but all the cool kids subscribe. I'm just saying. So what's going on this week? Okay, well, we start off the week with a square between Mercury and Jupiter. Now, Mercury and Jupiter, they get together. They can be a little loquacious, saying a lot, saying maybe perhaps even a little too much. Mercury is in Leo with a little bit of, let's not say self-centered type of orientation, but, potentially. And Jupiter is in Taurus, where he's very happy. So what we could get here would be, a little bit over dramatic, let's say. Let's say this is Sunday coming into Monday, over dramatic for some folks. But it's not really likely to be all that charged up because of the fact that we are coming into the new moon. The new moon is on Monday, so the energy runs a little bit low. Yeah, some people will be shooting their mouths off. Some people will be a little extra. There'll be a little bit of too much drama, verbal drama mostly. But, the new moon kind of sort of settles it down a little bit. Now, this new moon on Monday, the 17th, this is a new moon that kind of gets us thinking about home, family, comfort zone. Basically, comfort zone, And I think that the way to think about it is to remember that security doesn't necessarily come from having, like the brick walls around everything. Sometimes security comes from the ability to be adaptable and flexible, the ability to make changes. And actually, if you watch the video on the nodes, you'll see that for the sign of Capricorn, but I would say this is kind of a little bit valid for for Cancerians, or certainly for all of us with the new moon in Cancer. The sense is that maybe we should be looking towards our own adaptability, our own ability to act, our own ability to keep moving in order to find security. Again, rather than thinking that we're going to keep everything the same, maybe the trick is to be able to flow into different situations and through them and have an active approach to things. Action is very much the word this week. And I feel that with the nodes going into Aries, the North Node in Aries, that's kind of going to be more the watchword as time goes on. The nodes officially change signs on Monday as well. The North Node leaves Taurus, retrogrades into Aries. The South Node leaves Scorpio and goes into Libra. That whole dynamic is, I don't know, maybe we'll see a little bit of it on Monday. A little flagship. We often get little flagships when something changes signs. I wouldn't think it's going to be all that dramatic. The nodes are a little bit more subtle than that. We come out of the new moon, the sun is going to be trine to Neptune. And that kind of sort of describes this new moon as well. It says, the early part of the week, a little bit of Mercury, Jupiter, loquaciousness aside, the early part of the week, a little bit easier kind of time. The moon waxes, I want to say almost gently. The moon sort of gently waxes for a few days. And then we hit Thursday. The moon, by the way, it'll wax through Cancer. It'll finish its short little trip in Cancer after the new moon goes into Leo through midweek, which again kind of sparks up a little bit of that Mercury Jupiter thing, because it'll conjunct Mercury and square Jupiter. So there may be a little bit more of that kind of drama that sort of plays out. Whatever got started on Sunday, Monday winds up playing out a little bit more through midweek, but not a bit. Why should we worry? Be careful driving. But you know what? Always be careful driving. That's just the watchword. Now we get to Thursday. What happens Thursday, you say? Mars is opposite to Saturn. Mars opposite Saturn is what we would call the don't multitask aspect. Now, Mars in Virgo is really ready to get into the particulars, really ready to look at the details, maybe forgets to look up and see the forest for the trees, right? Very focused, very detail oriented. Saturn can kind of dig that. Saturn is saying, yeah, let's go let's go carefully with things. Mars and Saturn get along fairly well in this respect. Of course, Saturn's out in Pisces, where precision is not exactly the not exactly the watchword. It's the right word. It's not the watchword. And so I think that Saturn will actually benefit from Mars being in Virgo. Anyway, what do you want to think about? Let's say Wednesday, Thursday. Pick a project, focus on it. You can do a lot. I'll be doing the Venus retrograde video, for example. Pick a project, focus on it. You can accomplish a great deal. Do not disperse your energies. Dispersing your energies, trying to multitask, trying to do a lot of things, not so good. Be aware that you might be a little too focused, a little too much the watchmaker over here, and not necessarily knowing what time it is. So that's your sort of way to approach midweek. Pick a task. Try to pick the task earlier in the week, coming out of the new moon, maybe Tuesday, early Wednesday. Good time to pick the task and then get to it Wednesday and Thursday. You can accomplish quite a bit with Mars opposite Saturn. And then there's Friday. What happens on Friday? The sun opposes Pluto. Now, the sun at the very end of Cancer is opposing Pluto at the very end of Capricorn. Here we have the dynamic. Who's got the power? Sun opposite Pluto always has a little of this flavor. Who really has the power? Well, the sun has the power. The sun is the gravitational force that keeps Pluto in orbit. The sun is the source of all the light that even Pluto's dim little reflection of from all those miles away is still the reflection of the sunlight. So the sun is the center, and yet Pluto is the periphery in its own way. So if we were to look at kind of the dynamic that's going on, let's say the sun might represent the king. Here we are, we're the king. And, in charge of things, the center of everything, the big pomp and circumstance and all of this type of thing. Pluto's the bankers, right? So if the king wants to make a new wing to the palace, gonna have to consult the bankers. If the king wants to go off and invade the local or gets invaded by the local kingdom or something like that, you're going to need the bankers. So you can see how this might play out in politics. You can see how it might play out in corporate intrigues and things like that. You can see how it can play out in our individual lives as well. There's a sense of what is life about? What am I doing? And what can I do? If I want to live my best life, maybe the nodes in the North Node in Aries has got you kind of excited. I want to go live my best life. And that's the sun shining there at the last degree of Cancer saying, yeah, we're going to go do it. And then there's Pluto in Capricorn saying, well, yeah, you're going to finance that? How are you going to do that? It's, your life purpose is to go do this. But, if you're going to go do that, you're going to need some wherewithal. A little bit of an opposition there. That opposition, because it is an opposition, often plays out not as an internal kind of thing, but a debate with others, right? So, it could be something as simple as, I really want to take a long weekend. I'm going to take Friday off and I'm going to go to the beach and sun myself. And then, well, but Friday's payday, and that's the day the check comes in, and maybe we should just, maybe we should postpone it. Something like that. Or your boss says, no, that's not going to happen. You could, some folks will find themselves in a bit of a battle with a monster. And Pluto at the very last degree of Capricorn is, potentially a monster. And the sun at the very last degree of Cancer is a little bit more protective, a little bit more security oriented than he's going to be on Saturday when he moves into his home sign of Leo. And that changes the dynamic quite a bit. So the sun going into Leo will open things up and get past Pluto. So whatever heaviness might be there on Friday, and it might be there on Friday, kind of shifts as the sun goes into Leo on Saturday. Now, indeed, I would hypothesize that Saturday would be the better weekend night. The sun at the very first degree of Leo feels a little bit more fun than, let's say, at the very last degree of Cancer opposite Pluto. That would be my take on things. But the fly in the ointment here is that Saturday is also the day that Venus stations to go retrograde. Now, that doesn't necessarily put the kibosh on good times or anything like that. Doesn't necessarily, but it also is not an indication for a raucous good time. The moon is waxing, that's nice. The sun is in Leo, that's terrific. But Venus retrograde, it sort of slows things down a little bit. It puts a brake on things just a tiny little bit. So it suggests that, maybe sticking with the stuff that you're more familiar with, maybe staying in familiar environs, and especially appreciating what you've got. Whatever that thing is that you have. If it's like, well, we were going to go out and do this big thing, but that didn't work out. The weather didn't cooperate, let's say. Or, potentially we couldn't get a group together, or, somebody's not feeling well or something like that. Or somebody's just kind of in like a little bit of a mood, Sun Pluto. Somebody's in a little bit of a mood. So, potentially you might have to dial things back a little bit with this Venus retrograde. It doesn't really work in such a tremendously obvious way. I mean, it's going to be retrograde for 40 days, so get used to it. And to tell you the truth, Venus has been in the shadow of her retrograde for the entire month, so it's nothing that is brand new or anything like that. But it's the day she stations to go retrograde. Now, well, we'll talk about that much more detail in the video on Venus retrograde. But suffice it to say, we're probably going to be feeling like going out and doing Venusian things. We want to indulge in pleasures of various kinds. We want to socialize. We're maybe looking for some romance or something like that. That's what Venus retrograde does, and particularly right on the station. And yet, as much as we want it, Venus maybe doesn't deliver all that much. So for the weekend, take what you get and enjoy it, and recognize that we're going through a period. It had to be in the summertime. For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, it had to be in the summertime. We are going through a period that is maybe a little bit more internal, a little bit more reflective and retrospective, a little bit less going out and having the big parties and stuff like that. Maybe, don't stop on my account. Don't stop on my account. If you can get out there and have a really raucous good time, go do it. So there's our summary. We have the new moon, relative quiet of the new moon, with Mercury, Jupiter maybe stirring things up a little bit at the very start of the week. Couple of days of relative calm. Mars opposite Saturn calls for focused action at midweek. Little tension as the sun opposes It may oppose. It may very well oppose Pluto. As the sun comes opposite to Pluto on Friday, tensions, what I want to do, where my vitality is, and what the restrictions are on it, what our ability to do things seems to be, who's got the power in the situation. Could be some power struggles between people, between friends, between lovers, between colleagues, between, randoms and stuff like that as well. And then Saturday, the sun goes into Leo, brightens things up quite a bit. Venus at the very end of Leo, at the other end of Leo, at 28 degrees Leo, stops to retrograde, maybe again damping things down a little bit. So the excitement this week comes pretty much Thursday, Friday, and the rest of the week we'll have to see how it flows along. It's pretty good week, more or less. Watch out for the few little rough spots, and I'll see you for the other videos soon.